So I should be able to watch the comments on here.
Right.
No, definitely not live.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, we're live? Are we?
Well,
Let's check this. If we are live, we are just double checking on my other computer here. We got a pretty cool presentation set up for you guys. A little bit different than, yep, we're live. We got 12 people watching.
Okay.
A little bit different than what Ryan did yesterday. My seminar, like I say, guys, is a lot about side imaging, and it's a lot about showing you pictures of images that I got from last season. So we're going to I'll be able to show you that on my own computer screen here, and I'll be able to use the mouse to kind of show you exactly what I'm looking at and stuff like that. I've got another computer here right next to me. So if you guys have any questions at any time, leave them in the comments. I'll get to them as soon as I can. Seeing as far as when they come up on the live stream here. So due to not having the Minnesota Musky Expo, I was scheduled to speak there, but unfortunately that obviously didn't happen. So we're going to do the best we can today for you guys to show you how you can use your electronics to your advantage, how I use them personally on a massive body of water like Green Bay, to break down that big water and really find these fish and make the most of my time that I have on the water with my customers guiding. So I'm going to, like I say, show you guys a little bit what I got going on. I should be able to share my screen with you guys and we can go through what we've got going on here. So first off, first things first, the number one tool in my boat is my Humminbird electronics, like by far, hands down. So let's get to the first one. The first slide that I'm going to talk about here is, this is the auto chart feature. Okay, so there's two features that Humminbird allows us to use that are really unique to their system, and that one being their auto chart live feature. So if you guys can look at this image that I've got up on the screen right now, you can see that I'm basically making my own map of this lake. Okay, this isn't Green Bay. This was a Canadian lake this last fall, but this actual lake does not have a map. There's no map. There's no paper map. There's nothing. So what my unit allows me to do is make my own map of the lake as I drive around. You guys can see where I've been driving. I was trolling in this pass, and you can see all the structure that's popping up. I knew this was a really cool spot, and I just wanted to lay it out instead of wasting 200-300 waypoints to mark out this giant point with all the reefs and humps. No.
So.
Oh, there we go. So I got a share screen.
Yeah.
There we go.
And no picture.
Sure. There. Now, sorry guys. Working out the bugs. So let's see. Now we got a mouse and everything. So you guys can see, like I said, the where I've been going and everything. So we can get a nice little layout of this map. Granted, Green Bay is not nearly this complicated as far as features. It's relatively flat, but there are some areas in the bay where you'll see a small 1-foot lip of a sand point, or somewhere on the sand flat, a rise or a dip, and that stuff shows up really well in this. And what looks to be just a giant sand bowl actually does have a good amount of structure. And over time, if you troll the spots or cast the spots over time, you can make your own map. And this is specific to just your unit. Now, in another scenario where I have a map of the lake, say I have my Lake Master chip, there's two slots. So you can put your Lake Master chip in and then your Auto Chart Live chip. They're two separate chips, but you can actually see one chip over top of the other. So you'll be able to see your standard map that comes on your Lake Master chip, and then your Auto Chart chip will actually redo the map over top of it. So you're going to always have a map as long as you have your Lake Master. Your Auto Chart is just going to make a new map over top of it. And it's really simple. It's literally 3 clicks of a button to get to this and get it to record. So, excuse me. So this is, like I say, really cool. You can see a lot of stuff over time. You'll see how much structure is really there. Obviously, being a Canadian Shield Lake, there's a ton of structure here, but then in the other sense on Green Bay, what looks to be not a lot of structure, there actually is quite a bit. So this is a really, really cool feature. And as you can see, down in the corner, we had like 120 feet of water, and then there's a hump here. There's a bunch of Cisco spawning here in the fall. So let's see. Okay, next image. So here is kind of where a lot of times when I run my screen at, I'll have my Humminbird side imaging on one side and then my Auto Chart Live here on the other. So if you look, The orange is what's all been auto charted. Okay, these are obviously trolling passes. And if you look, the white is my standard Lake Master chip. Now, the last few years, the Great Lakes have really been rising in water levels. The bay right now is the highest it's ever been, and a lot of the Great Lakes are at their highest point. So this chip that may have been taken, the information on here 6 years ago, if you can see this 4-foot contour line here, right? That's from the standard Lake Master chip. Well, if you follow that chip out one contour line, that would be 5 foot. But if you look at my auto chart, you'll actually see that it's more of an 8-foot contour line. And it's not that Lake Master didn't do this correctly. It's more so that the water level has just came up like 3 feet in the last 8 years. It's pretty incredible how much the bay has been rising. So, and you can do it with your shallow water offsets as well with your hummingbird units. But this will get you the exact map of what's really there. Okay. It looks really bland, like I say, in your standard chip. If you take the time to auto chart it, you can see a ton of really, really cool information with the auto chart live. So the next feature, and what I think is by far the most useful for my application, is the mega side imaging. I'm sure everybody's heard about it. Everybody's heard the buzz about it, how important it is. And it does catch me so many more fish with that technology. And we're going to kind of start with some really basic images here. And then we're going to kind of work up to more complex images, show you what I'm seeing and what that unit is actually telling me and how I can interpret that to help me catch more fish. So we're going to start with really basic stuff, and then we're going to work into a little bit more complex stuff. And don't be scared, guys. I get a lot of people that come in the boat and they're like, I don't really know what I'm looking at, or how do I know what this is? How do I know what that is? And to be honest with you, I always don't know what I'm looking at. But the thing is the more you look at it, the more familiar you get with it, and the better, I don't want to say guess, but the better guess you can make of what that really is. Obviously, we have a nice muskie here on the side imaging. You can see that really well. You can see in the shadow here, you can see the really nice fork in the tail, really nice long body. You can kind of see the nose of the fish here, okay? But what you need to pick up from this image here, right, is that the fish itself is actually the highlighted piece. If you guys can see where my mouse is, the highlighted piece right there, that's the fish itself. So this is basically a flashlight, right? So it's illuminating the fish, okay, which is our highlighted yellow piece. And then the shadow is gives us the shape of the image, right? So then you get a really nice image. You can see the fork and whatnot. So the other thing you can tell from this image is, okay, I generally run my side imaging. This was on my Gen 2 unit. I now have a Gen 3 unit. But this Gen 2 unit, I think I could run at 80 feet to either side and get a nice crisp image. So that is to scale as well. So right here, this white line is our center, center of the boat, right? So from this white line to the bottom, I would guess would be somewhere in the 8-foot range. Okay, so you have 10 foot right about here, say 20 foot here. So this fish may be 25 to 30 feet off to the side. Okay, so I can see how far away from the boat that fish is. What else I can tell from this image is the distance between the highlighted mark and the shadow will tell you how far the fish is off the bottom. So the greater the distance between the highlighted piece and the shadow, the further that fish is off the bottom. So now I can tell, okay, this fish is, I would say, within a foot of the bottom. Okay, it's foot 18 inches. Okay, tight to the bottom. Now I need to know, maybe from trolling, that I need to run my baits a little bit lower in the water column, but still staying above that fish. But also, if I start seeing marks that have more separation between the two, I now know that maybe I need to bring my baits up to make sure my baits are always above the fish's head, right? You always want to be above those fish. So you can tell not only how far away from the boat they are, but also where they're at in the water column just from this image, which is really, really cool. Next slide here, okay. This is in a casting scenario, right? I'm going 0.6 miles an hour. It's the summer, we're casting. And if you look at this, you can see on the left side of my screen here, it's basically all weeds, okay? We're going really slow. This is a big weed bed. If you look on the right, again, we've got a weed bed, but you can see the transition line from sand to weed, right? It's up this transition line. And all of a sudden, boom, you see your fish, right? So the highlighted piece, this one is really close. This fish is right tight to bottom. And again, you can see the really nice fork tail. You can even see the top dorsal right there, which is really cool. And what's amazing about this image is that these weeds here are, they've got some height to them. I'd say they're at least 18 inches tall. And this unit is powerful enough to shoot through the weed bed, probably 25, 30 feet again, and still pick up this fish that is laying tight to bottom. So the power of this transducer with the megahertz and the clarity that it offers us is just amazing. So in this scenario, in this casting scenario, we obviously went past this fish already. The fish obviously didn't move. We didn't see it, that we didn't have a follow, but I know that fish is there, right? And that is so valuable, being that muskies are so tough, not only get to eat, but even to get to move sometimes. And just knowing where there's a fish, if you have nothing else to go on that entire day, right? You fish 12 hours, you don't see a single fish, no follows, but you marked a couple fish. Now, if you're coming up on major or minor, or if you got a weather change, you can go back with confidence to an area that you know you saw a fish and put yourself in best position possible, instead of just randomly keep fishing, your other spots. You know where there's a fish, which is so crucial, and has worked for me so many times. I never maybe saw the fish on side imaging, or never saw the fish on a follow, but again, I saw it on side imaging, came back to it, and then that fish ends up in the bag, right? Really cool. So this is kind of another image. I hope everybody's getting it so far. I will get to see. Can you see my screen, Jess?
Yeah.
Okay. One guy just commented he couldn't see the screen, but it was
way
7 minutes ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll refresh this here so if I can see anybody's questions so far, because all this is going to kind of build on each other. So we're gonna start with the basic stuff, and we're gonna keep building our way up to what we're seeing here. Just refresh this again. See if you guys didn't see. Oh yeah, there we go. We got 74 people watching. Really cool. All right. Let's see. Awesome. Okay. Good. Yeah, like I said, I can see the comments now. I'll just keep refreshing that page. Like I say, so if you guys have any questions, comment there. I'll look at my other computer here and get those answered. So like I say, this is pretty basic. Okay. I just want you guys to realize what you're seeing. So let's go to our next image here. Now, these are just two different images. Okay, let's start on the left side of the screen. 8.9 feet of water, 0.6. So I'm casting 76.1, right? So peak of summer, about as warm as the water gets on Green Bay. So if you see again, you can see this highlighted yellow piece. This one's a little bit harder to see, but right there is our highlighted yellow piece. And then we've obviously got the shadow of our fish. Now, so if you look at if you look at this, right, you can see that fish is relatively, again, close to the bottom, and there's not that much separation in between the two. But if you look at this little bait fish, it might be a walleye, it might be a perch, who knows in reality, but you can see even the size of the bait fish. So it's tough to guess as far as sizing, because it's kind of, I haven't been able to see a fish in the side image and say that's a 45 incher, that's a 50 incher, but you can obviously see a smaller bait fish here, and see again that you can even see the smaller highlighted piece. Okay, the distance between the highlighted piece and the shadow is a little bit larger, so that fish is a little bit bigger or further off the bottom. And this technology, guys, is not just for musky fishing. I use it every single day for walleyes and smallmouth fishing as well. So they're obviously, muskies show up really well because they're big, they're large, they portray a really nice image. But at the same time, I get really cool images of smallmouth and walleyes as well. That this is more than just musky fishing. If you invest in this tool, you guys it'll benefit you in so many different ways. Everything you do, you can benefit from this mega side imaging technology. So if we look over on the right side, you can actually drag your cursor over if you want to get a closer look at these images, and just zoom in. So press your plus sign, and then you can see this is you can zoom in 4 times or 2 times or 4 times, and this is a 4 times zoom in image of a different fish, just hanging out in the sand, doing what muskies do, just swimming around. Obviously that one didn't need a bait, but again, I know that fish is there, right? I can come back at a later period. So let's keep moving on. This is a really cool image. Okay, so I've got 2 different images here. Now, let's start on this one on the right-hand side. So what we've got going on here, we've got my screen itself, just my side imaging screen, and you can see my auto chart, my other graph below it, with all my auto chart and all my waypoints. But if you look at this, right, so the white line is the center line of our boat. Okay, this black area is a distance between the boat and the bottom, right, the transducer in the bottom. So if we look right around here, okay, once we get down just below my cursor, you can see there's a highlighted yellow piece and then a large shadow off to the left. This isn't the greatest image as far as like seeing fins and stuff, but at the same time, that's a really large object. If you guys see the bottom, you can see how rolly it is. It was probably really wavy that day. And in this case, I just literally drove right over top of Musky. I mean, I guess it could have been a really, really big pike. But if it's that big of a pike, I wouldn't be too mad about catching it, I guess. But like I say, that we literally just drove right over top of one. So again, throw a waypoint down. In this case, I think I was trolling, so I can swing out again and then put my planer boards over top of this fish. Okay. If you look on the left side of the screen at this other image, you can see again, same thing, center line, black, down to the bottom. If you see this yellow line, okay, or orangish line that's right in the middle of the black, goes all the way down. What that is that's a down rod. Okay, that's right off my boat. And down rod, it's sticking right down the water. And that highlighted line is actually the bubble trail from my rod. Okay, this transducer is picking up air bubbles in the water, right? I can't explain enough to you how powerful this transducer is. But it's literally seeing the bubble line from my rod. Well, if you look at it, all of a sudden we've got a fish that's right on my rod, and you can see the shadow again is separated. So that fish is right on my rod. Okay. I see this, I've got a bait back maybe 12, 15 feet. Like I'm just waiting for my rod to rip. It didn't, unfortunately, but then again, it's like, okay, I just put a bait past a fish. Maybe it's the wrong color. Maybe it's the wrong size. Maybe it's the wrong, something. Maybe I need to change it. Something that fish did not like it. Drop waypoint again, maybe spin around, throw my boards over it. I might have different baits out on my boards. I generally do versus what's on my down rod. So again, knowing that fish is there is super crucial. But even being able to see that you just had a fish look right at your down rod, like you brought that bait within, I would say, 3 feet of the fish, which is pretty incredible, pretty incredible. I'm gonna refresh this once just to see if I got any new questions below, and then we're gonna keep going on this. Two more comments. Awesome. People are tagging other people, which is good. This is, this is to help everybody kind of get a new feel. Like the online seminar is super cool for you guys to watch, and everybody's getting ready for musky season. If you guys are looking to make the investment into the hummingbird units, obviously Thorne Brothers carries all these units. They've got Johnny who can rig the boats. He's super good with them. If you don't want to worry about rigging it or drilling holes in your new boat, Johnny does it. He does a really good job. He's rigged my own stuff before. So they'll set you up not only with the electronics, but also a guy to help you set it up and rig your boat out. And then I think Johnny even does an option where he'll take you out in the water and kind of explain to you what you're seeing, and how to run your units, where you should have your settings, your sensitivity, your contrast, all the different features. All that can come right through Thorne Brothers. So it's a great shop to deal with. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you guys, have had experience with the store, but they're doing a really cool sale right now due to the Minnesota Muskie Expo being canceled, obviously. So all their online sales are really good right now. So if you guys want to go check that out, you definitely should. They've got a lot of really good deals running. So let's get to our next image. Okay, this is actually just a small clip. This actually isn't in my boat, but this is a Solix 15 unit. Okay, so this is their upgraded one from their Helix. Okay, this is their Solix unit. It's a touchscreen unit. It's got more storage, a faster processor, stuff like that. But it's just a small clip, and I'm going to show you guys just what it would look like as this screen is playing. What a Muskie would look like. Now in the Gen 3 units, your images show up not nearly as large. I'd say they're a lot more to scale. It seemed like the Gen 2 units, like it looked every Muskie was 60 inches long. Whereas this one, things are a lot more to scale with the new Gen 3s, which can be very helpful. And the new Gen 3s have they said it was 20% wider and 20% clear, and there's definitely 20% more width. I can run my graph now at 100 to 110 feet when I'm fishing anywhere from 6 to 12 feet of water. So that much more distance. Okay, so even 20 feet adds up to 40. You have 20 feet on each side of your boat. So you're seeing that much more water, okay, which is super crucial. You can see that many more fish, that much more structure and stuff like that. So if you look at this image, okay, if you guys can see my mouse, here's the fish right here on the right side. And if you look to the right of it, you can see this transition line. And what this is the Fox River, and this is a riprap wall. Okay, so you can actually see the rocks where it transitions into sand, and then it drags out, like I say, back to our boat. So, and even you can put up the scale numbers on top. So you can see if, 25 feet out, 50 feet out, 75 feet out is a rock wall. This fish is probably 53 to 54 feet off the side of the boat. Okay. And at any time, if you guys want to drag your cursor over and drop a waypoint on this fish, you can do it. Your GPS will take into effect everything and put it right on top of that fish. It's not where your boat is, it's where you put that cursor. So you can put a waypoint 53 feet over from your boat and know exactly where that fish is sitting at that time, right? So that as well can be really, really useful. So I'm going to play this quick, and you guys can kind of see. I'm going to touch the screen and zoom in because this is a Solix unit. It is touch screen. So here you can see we're going along. You can hear my kicker kind of winding. Touch on that. I'm going to just hit the plus. So 2 times zoom, 4 times zoom. So this fish, I don't think was very big. Just from using my new Gen 3 units, I think it was a smaller fish, but it was this last fall, one of the last guide trips I ran, and I wanted to get a small clip for you guys to show you what it looked like as it's scrolling down the screen. Okay, a couple questions here. What speed do you usually run your chart speed at? I sometimes have issues seeing clear images of the muskies off the sides. Great question. So the faster that your boat is moving, the faster you want your scroll speed to be. The slower your boat's moving, the slower you want your scroll speed to be. So if I'm casting, I might bump it down to 3 or 4. If I'm trolling, it might be 5 is standard. It might be 5 or it might be 6. But the thing with this, and the thing with all these electronics is every single boat is different. Okay, everybody's eyes are even different. So you have to tune in your own graph to what's working. Unfortunately, if you own a aluminum boat, you're not going to get nearly as good a clear as image as fiberglass boats, just because the way the water runs down the hull. But the biggest thing is transducer placement. And Kurt Hansen did a really cool article for Musky Hunter a couple issues ago, I think 2 or 3 issues ago, explaining how to mount where to mount your side of your transducer, how to mount it correctly, because you want it right in the center of your boat. Okay, as far down and as centered in the boat of your hull as you can, right? Your 2D sonar is generally up and to the side, is where a lot of dealers and people put it. And sometimes they'll put your side imaging transducer up there too. And that's not good, because a lot of times you're going to read your motor is going to be in the way for your images on the other side of the boat. So you want that transducer directly below your engine, centered as much as possible, and as low on your hull as you can, without the water hitting it too hard. You just want the water to just come off your hull and just hit the bottom of your transducer. You don't want it too low, you don't want it too high. There's a little sweet spot in there. I'm sure there's videos on YouTube where they'll show you how to correctly mount it. But the biggest thing, like I say, is mounting that transducer correctly. It's really important. And then as far as your settings, like you say as well, play with it, whatever looks best for your specific boat and your unit. Even water clarity has an impact on this. So things change from day to day. I'm always messing with my settings. If the water got dirtier or cleaner, if there's an algae bloom, there's all kinds of different factors to it. And it's really simple to play with. Hummingbird's layout is really, really easy to get around. It's a couple clicks of the button, back and forth. Okay, super simple. Let's see, I got one more question here. Can you cover how far from the boat the image is and how deep you think the fish is? Yep. So Roger, that is kind of what we talked about before. I don't know if I can go back. Well, here, let's look at this one. So you can see that this fish here, okay, here's your fish itself, the highlighted piece, and here's your shadow. So the distance between here is what's going to tell you how far that fish is off the bottom. In this scenario, this might have been like 8 feet of water. So right here, so this fish is about halfway between the bottom and the white line. So that fish may be 3 to 4 feet off the bottom, okay? If you look at like another image like this one, you can see this highlighted yellow piece is right tight to the bottom, and then your fish is almost touching it, right? So that fish is basically belly to the bottom. So that's how you'll be able to tell that distance. Let's get back here. Oh, there's that. Okay, so now we've kind of seen single fish. Let's start talking about seeing multiple fish. Okay, this is a image of, again, in a casting scenario, I'm going 0.8 miles an hour. You can see this is on my old Gen 2 unit. It's not quite as crisp as the new ones, but you can see again the transition line. This is a weed bed. You can see the transition here from sand to weeds, and then the left side you've got a fish that's just laying out here in the sand, and then again you can see your weed line here, and then you go up into this little cut, and like the fish is just right where it's supposed to be, like right in this little sand cut that goes into this weed bed. And here you can see this highlighted piece right here. That's your fish, okay? And then that fish, I'd say, is a foot, maybe 18 inches off the bottom, and then here's your shadow from the fish, okay? Now, the one below, I've kind of got it's probably my contrast that's a little too high here. My screen's really bleached out. but you can't, I've got a hard time seeing this fish down here as far as the highlighted piece itself, but I can see that there's a shadow. There's obviously a fish in the area. Good to know. On the Green Bay, we tend to see a lot of fish that hang out together. I don't call them schools. I kind of call them like a pack of fish. It's not uncommon for us to see, 2 fish up to, 8, 10 fish using a very, very small area, and sometimes even more. So this is really cool. And I think a lot of times with Green Bay, and I've talked to some other people about this, and it's like why everybody thinks that muskies are so territorial. And I think some of them are, but I've seen in a lot of cases too, where it's like they definitely work together or hang out in the same areas in a very close proximity to each other. And it's really cool to see it. It might be that it's a stocked fishery, supposedly. I've talked to some people about it, and we think that some of the stocked fishery, just because the fish kind of grew up together, they were all in a hatchery together, then they kind of hang out together throughout their lifetime. They're just used to being around other fish. And then some fish, I'm sure, are just nomads and do whatever they want. But again, guys, here's just 2 fish at the same time, both on the left side of the screen. So this is definitely a spot I'd want to come back to. It seems like I got a bite window going on later in the day, or again, major, minor weather change. Okay, this image here is really special. This image was from this last fall. This particular night, I had Nick Eddy from Musky Frenzy in the boat, and we were trolling around, and all of a sudden, like, there was just a big push of fish. And this I could almost call a school of muskies, because there was I've never seen so many fish in such a small area. But there was like 30 muskies that I could mark consistently in a 500-yard circle. It was just every time I went through them, I'd mark them. I'd run out of fish. I'd turn around. I'd come back through. I'd mark them again. So if you look at this image here, okay, it's basically a sand flat. You can see some scattered weed clumps. Okay, there's one on the left side, and there's a little bit more scattered weeds on the right side. But if you look, okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 muskies. Okay, this bottom image is really nice. You can see the fork and the tail really well. But 6 fish in this very small area, right? So if you think about this, okay, I'm running my side imaging at 100 feet. So I've got 100 feet on one side, 100 feet on the other. So there's 200 feet. Okay, the distance. Okay, if you look at the cursor up here, the distance from where my boat is to this cursor in the middle of my screen is 129 feet. So that's 129 feet behind the boat. So just for number's sake, let's call this 200 feet to the bottom of my screen. So in a 40,000 foot square area, I've got 6 muskies, right? It's a lot of fish in a very small area. And like I say, this particular spot, for whatever reason, these fish just slid in here and they were all of a sudden everywhere. So we started trolling, or we were trolling, I should say. And this was late in the afternoon. I think we had like 2 hours to sunset. I kept going over them. I couldn't get bit. And then classic, right at sunset, we have a rod go off and it catches this nice fish on a crankbait. So what happened is now it's sunset. We just fished all day. We finally got our bite, and now I'm excited. Now I'm like, okay, we got one. There's 29 more fish there to catch, right? So we keep trolling. Again, we're going around and around. As soon as I get through these fish, I don't mark them anymore. Turn around. I'm trying different angles, different speeds. This fish, I think, ate a perch colored bait. I put out some more perch colored stuff, and just kept fiddling with it or playing with it, seeing if I could dial in what they really wanted. And after about, I think it was an hour and a half, after we caught this fish, I kept seeing them, but I couldn't get the fish to do anything. So it's like, okay, what's our other option? Well, let's pull the trolling rods in. Let's put some blades on. Let's cast. Okay, it's now after dark. Let's do some casting. And we went up to the top of this little 500-yard circle, made our first drift, and 51-incher eats it 20 minutes into casting. Okay, way out on the cast. So again, knowing that those fish were there, I wouldn't have been doing donuts for 4 hours. First of all, trolling, and then second of all, I never would have pulled the trolling rods in and then went to casting after dark, after fishing for 15, 16 hours without knowing that those fish were there, seeing that they were there. So it gave me confidence, which is so key in musky fishing, to just focus on this small area, figure out what these fish wanted, and eventually just, making sure that I was there at the right place at the right time. And this fish ate a really nice bucktail from Nick, a double 10. Musky Frenzy bucktail. So that was the first pass, right? So now we just caught one. So now it's like, okay, they're here, they're biting bucktails. Let's go make a second pass. 48-incher and a figure 8. Okay. So my first pass was probably half hour. And then second pass, this one was right at the end. So about 30 minutes later, after we caught that other fish, this one actually ate in a figure eight right next to the boat. And this is, I think, a 4-footer. But again, just now it's 3 fish that we've caught in about a 2.5 hour window, simply because of side imaging, knowing that those fish were there, marking them on the electronics, and spending our time in the right place. And eventually things happen for us, right? So I think I got one other image here. Oh, back up. Spoiler alert. So we went through, like I say, this whole spot. We fished it, I think, until 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. And we were both pretty dead. We're like, all right, the fishing slowed down. I was still marking the fish, but they weren't biting anymore. So I'm like, all right, let's get back, go get some sleep quick, and then we'll be out here early in the morning. We get a really good morning bite on the bay. So I'm kind of thinking when I wake up the next morning driving to the launch, like, what do I want to do? Do I want to cast? Do I want to troll? Right? We caught 1 trolling, but we caught 2 casting. Okay, but my thought process on this was those fish moved in so easily, they can easily just move to go somewhere else, right? And I left them for about 5 hours. Like I say, we left at 12. I think we're back to the launch at 5. So my thought process was, okay, I want to put the trolling rods back out. I want to find the fish first. I'll make a couple passes over them if I can find them, and then if they're not cooperating, I can go to casting and see if they're still wanting to eat blades. So we set the boards up, get just to the waypoints, and we roll in, and Nick catches himself his biggest musky, a 53-incher, which was super cool. And it was literally like right next to the waypoints that I caught those other 2 fish from the night before. So those fish really hadn't moved. They were still there. And again, guys, it just because of, now this is 4 fish in a matter of less than 3 hours of fishing, simply because of side imaging. Okay. Like I said, this was Nick's biggest fish ever. So we had 2 over 50 and 2 that were mid to upper 40s. So really awesome fish, high quality fish, but simply because of the electronics. We would not have caught these fish without them. So many fish come in my boat simply because my electronics and knowing how to use them. So I think I got one more image here. Yep, this was from that same night. Again, now there's even more fish here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fish. Like I said, it was just amazing how many fish were there. It was just mind blowing. All of a sudden, they just showed up. I fished that spot earlier that day. Hadn't seen anything. Went back and checked it like 4 hours later, and all of a sudden, like they were just there. They were everywhere. I'm gonna just refresh the feed real quick on the other computer, see if anybody chimed in with some more questions. If you guys have questions, please ask them. Questions are super good. What speeds do you run your mega imaging casting versus trolling around? 4 miles an hour. So that I kind of went through that earlier. Generally casting, I run my scroll speed from 3 to 4, and then trolling is 4, maybe 5, and sometimes 6 if I'm going super fast. But definitely slower when I'm trolling. See. Your questions. All right, so Roger asked, trolling on leech over 90 to 100 feet of water, it's hard for me to determine how deep the fish is. If the water's only 8 feet deep, probably not as critical. Is that the origin of my question? So if you're in super deep water, well, I think first thing I want to say is if you're pulling muskies out of more than 30 feet of water, you're probably going to hurt them if they're sitting that deep. But generally, if you're talking about maybe the open water bite or some of that, maybe in the fall, if these fish are out suspended, paddling around, whatever they're doing, it might be a little bit harder to determine how far the fish is off the bottom. I guess I personally have never been in that scenario. I guess I've marked some fish in some deeper, like Canadian trout water that are really deep. But I would try to still base it off of the, God, it's hard because you wouldn't be able to see the bottom if you're that deep and running 100 feet out. Generally, the deeper you are too, the further out you can get your side imaging and you'll have more of a crisp image. It's when you're shallow and trying to see out really far that you're going to lose it. It will get kind of dark on the sides. So I don't have the best answer for you, Roger, I guess personally, just because I don't experience that a whole lot where I fish. I'm generally less than 14 feet of water at all times. Here's a question. Do you always run side imaging at 100 feet to each side? I get the most out of it that I possibly can. So in my settings, what happens is you'll see kind of on the side here, you can see where it kind of gets dark. The beauty of this is I can push it a little bit because I'm really familiar with seeing what I'm seeing. And if I see the highlighted piece, it'll show up really nice in the dark stuff. What you lose is that shadow once you kind of get towards your edges if you're pushing it. But generally, like I say myself, I run it at 100 feet. If you're a little bit deeper, you can push maybe 105, 110. I think they go in 5-foot increments as far as where your side imaging is. On the Helix units, I think the Solix is you can go like per foot, which is a little overkill, I think, but really nice. Obviously, you can kind of dial it in. But yeah, like I say, I push it as far as I can and still being able to see a nice marker, a nice image. Refresh it one more time, and then we're going to keep going. I hope you guys are enjoying this so far. I apologize. I mean, I guess it's not my fault, but the whole thing with the coronavirus is obviously not cool. Okay, I just updated to a pair of Helix 10s Gen 2 with built-in GPS. Is the heading sensor necessary or beneficial to mount as well? Heading sensors are awesome. I have a heading sensor as well. Kurt kind of talked me into getting one, and it wasn't very hard. So basically, instead of seeing the icon of your boat in whichever direction you're going, it's going to show, you know, the power of your boat going that way. What a heading, if you're in a drifting scenario, which I do a lot in the bay, I'm sure guys in Mille Lacs drift a ton. But if you're drifting sideways, right, the heading sensor will actually show you that you're moving sideways instead of the bow of the boat this way. So if you have certain waypoints that you need to cast to, you can see if you're in an open water scenario like Green Bay, you can see kind of the angle you need to cast that off of the boat because it shows you your true heading of where your boat is pointed. So it'll actually show you drifting sideways versus your standard GPS. It would show if you're drifting sideways that your bow is actually turned 90 degrees. So the heading sensor, I think it's $100, is super worth it if you drift a lot. It's really nice for positioning your boat. And if you really need to make a specific cast, the heading sensor is awesome. Nick Eddy, look at the guy holding the giant fish. Yeah, that's you. All right, let's see what we got next here. Okay, now I'm going to show you guys how I use this in a casting scenario. Okay, so this was actually that same night that Nick caught that I caught the 2 fish casting, and then Nick caught the one trolling. This was later in the night, I think about 11 o'clock. 11:30, but this was kind of our telltale sign that the fish were kind of slowing down. We made a couple of drifts, no bites, and then we got this. And what this is, okay, this is again my standard side imaging. Let's look at the left side of the screen here, okay, without all the writing on it. Left side of the screen, again, you'll see the center line, black area, then you hit your bottom. I'm in 9 feet of water, okay. Now, if you look, we'll start at the bottom of the screen because this is what I would have saw first, right? Because this is scrolling history, okay. So when I come in on my figure eights, okay, now instead of after dark having to run a headlamp or worrying about, you know, I never actually ran a headlamp myself, but worrying about, you know, I'm going to make one really good figure eight, hopefully the fish eats it, and I'm just going to pull my bait out and make another cast, right? That's always been the mentality of musky guys. None of us are going to, in the dark, do 5, 6, 7, 8 figure eights after every single cast before we make another one, right? We're just hoping that if that fish is active, they're going to eat it in the first or second turn. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. Well, now with this technology, and even now what Minn Kota is doing and allowing me to see not only the transducer in the back of the boat for side imaging, but also now they make the Ultrexes and Alteras with mega side imaging built into the transducer. So now you can have 2 different side imaging transducers, okay? So what this is going to do, I got to back up a little bit, is if you look, okay, you can see if we go to the top of the screen here, you'll see this little yellow blip right in the black. There's 1, there's 2, okay? What that is my bucktail. That's me doing a figure eight. Every time I pull that bait past that transducer, my transducer is picking up the image of the bucktail, it's showing it to me on the screen, okay? So now every time I come in on a figure eight, I make sure I come in and I go past my side imaging transducer. I'm not looking at the water. I have a graph that's mounted kind of right at my feet on my gun on the back of the boat. And I'm just watching that graph to see if I'm going to see a fish that pops up behind my bait, right? So with a 10-foot rod, I'm able to get that rod point deep enough and far enough out to get past my transducer and then come back around through the boat again. So making those big eights and getting the bait past the deucer, you can see a fish now that shows up behind my bait, right? So in reality, the 2 blimps in the top were the end of my figure eight because the fish quit falling. So in reality, the bottom is what I would have saw first because this is, like I say, scrolling history. So you can see the bait, see the fish. Okay, that's like this is actually my fourth turn already. So bait, fish, next figure eight, bait, fish, next figure eight, bait, fish, next figure eight, bait, fish, and then just the bait, just the bait. Okay, so I stopped the screen here because I wanted to take a picture of this. It was really cool to show you guys in a seminar scenario, but you can see the fish chasing my bucktail around. So not only can we see fish that are off to the side, but now we can see fish literally following our baits after dark. And even during the day, if you've got a lake that's really dirty, or if you might have a lazy follow, again, it's seeing a fish, knowing that a fish is there, okay? And eventually you can use this to actually, not only see fish, but you will catch fish doing this. Now, here's another side imaging mark, okay? So let's look at this. This is another figure eight fish, okay? So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a small yellow blimp, which is my bucktail. Then you'll see this highlighted piece in the shadow. Okay, that's a muskie. That's turn number like 4. Okay, next one, bait, muskie. You got a really nice image of the fish here. Really nice fork in the tail. Definitely a fish, right? If you look here, you can see again, there's some stuff going on. It's kind of a little fuzzy, but you'll see the shadow here, okay? Now, if you look in the spacing of my figure eights, right? So there's 1, 2, 3. My fourth one's gonna be right about where the cursor is, okay? And if you look, all of a sudden the shadow that was these 3 images, the shadow was kind of a little bit closer to the black area. All of a sudden this shadow is twice the distance away from the black area. So what just happened? What happened was, instead of the fish being closer to the bottom, now the highlighted piece, which in this, it's kind of blimped out. I don't know why we can't see it, but if you look at the shadow, that's telling us that that fish just came up in the water column, right? That fish is now further off the bottom. So that fish just was following the bait. It was a little bit deep, hanging out lazy. All of a sudden that turn, fish bumps up, and all this yellow kind of fuzzy stuff here in the black is air bubbles, because the fish just ate it and now it's fighting. Okay, so that fish came from underneath the bait, all of a sudden up on the bait, eats the bucktail, and right in this scenario here where you see this kind of fuzzy yellow stuff, that's me fighting the fish, right? And it ends up being, here's a short little clip of releasing the fish later. Here's the fish.
Marked her on side imaging.
Here's my graph.
Never saw the fish, just went deep with the 8s, went around about 8 times. I kept marking her. Giant Green Bay Muskie.
Big one.
Early bird gets the worm.
So there's our fish, right? Simply because of side imaging. This fish, I think, went around like I said, I just said in the video, I think 6 or 8 times, but eats a stagger in the 8. Really cool fish. Like I say, it was one of this was the first fish I actually caught on side imaging with the figure 8 stuff after dark. So it was really cool. But great fish. And again, who of us in watching this right now would do 8 figure 8s, after dark? None of us would. It'd be 1 or maybe 2, 3 if you're really adamant, and then pull your bait out, make another cast. So this fish didn't eat until, like say, the 6th or 8th turn. So again, simply because of side imaging, this fish was boated. What's that worth to you? Here's another fish. I guess I'll tell a little backstory on this one. So this fish here, this is my first day back to Green Bay last year. I had a husband and wife. I had a husband thrown a bulldog or a Medusa, and the wife was throwing a Poseidon, and I was throwing a bulldog in the back. And what happened is I had each of them, one off one side, one off the other, and then I was fishing in my little corner. And the fish came, or I should say we went past the fish. I saw it on side imaging. I told my guys, like, all right, it's reel up real quick. I said, point or cast back here. It's like the fish was about 30 feet off the side of the boat. And I pointed back in this direction. Okay, behind the boat. It's like, cast back there. There's a fish right there. So they both cast. They're working their baits back. I let them get about halfway in. I spin around, make a cast that was behind theirs. And I made 3 sweeps of the rod with the dog, and the fish ate it. Again, the wrong guy caught the fish, but simply this fish was caught because of side imaging. And guiding for me isn't so much always, it's obviously about getting people fish, right, or catching them fish, but it's just as much for me about educating people on how to use their electronics, or just how to fish in general, to use it on their own time, right? It's such a learning experience. That's what I get the most, as far as what I get out of guiding, is more so teaching people how they can use what they've learned in this trip for their own experiences on their own time, on their own lakes as well. So this was kind of proof in the pudding for this husband and wife, and it was really cool. It kind of blew them away that I could literally turn around, say, make a cast behind the boat in an area that we had already fished, and then come up with a really nice fish here. So again, just another example of using your side imaging, always watching it. Make sure that screen is on. Do not run your units without your side imaging running. Always be watching it, because it can pay off for you like that. Here's a small short clip. I'm going to refresh this one more time, but this is a small clip of me and two of my customers this last summer. We're out on the bay. This is right at sunset, and you'll see here, you can see the little highlighted ring from my Helix on the dash, and then you'll see another one here. That's the one at my feet, or the one kind of on the console, or on the gunnel, I'm sorry, in the back. And you can actually kind of see my head, and you'll see the brim of my hat's turned down, because I'm literally just watching the side imaging as I'm reeling this bait in. And you'll see that what happens is I'm kind of drifting on this spot, but I'm also using the trolling motor to kind of push me ahead slowly to stay on this weed line. So we're kind of going on an angle. And what I see is all of a sudden, where I think my guys had just made a cast. I was like halfway in, and all of a sudden I see this fish like 15 feet away from the boat, and it's right under. It's like straight in front of me, right? Well, I'm moving the boat this way away from the fish slowly as we're drifting. So my first thought was, okay, I need to stop the boat, and I don't have enough time to have my guys reel in and cast at this fish, or even myself to reel in and cast at this fish. I'm just going to kill the boat. So instead of the boat continuing to kind of go on an angle, it's going to die, and the wind's going to correct us, and we're going to drift right over top of this fish. Okay. So what I tell my guys is, there's a fish right in front of us. When you come in on your cast, figure 8 until I tell you to stop. Okay. Just keep figure 8ing. There's a fish in front of us. We're going to drift right over top of it. Figure 8ing. I'm going to put the boat right over top of the fish. Okay. If you guys watch this clip, we'll show you how this all went down.
5-yard circle, I saw him.
I haven't seen the fish yet. One guy just made a cast. You can see my head is literally just staring at my side imaging the entire time here. And I kind of look back at the bait. There, I just told my guys it was fish. Now here, you can see I'm watching my side imaging, waiting for that fish to show up. Following my bait. Keep going. There's our bite. Headlamp on. Pretty awesome, and be able to show you this little clip. These guys are blown away by the fact that he said we didn't have enough time to reel in, make a cast at the fish, because I was going angled, and all of a sudden I picked up the fish. The fish was actually up here. So once my side image transducer hit the fish, I saw it stop the boat, and we kind of drifted back over. That was really cool.
Well done, dude.
Really cool.
What color?
What color? All right. Always the green bay question. What color? But again, there's just another fish simply because of the side imaging technology. It worked. I caught so many fish this year because of it, and last year as well. But this year, the more I really dove in and really watched it a lot closer, the more it paid off for me. And it's incredible technology. What it can do for you is absolutely amazing. Okay, let's see. Instead of questions on the bay, let's do questions on side imaging and the auto chart stuff. If you guys want to chime in real quick on the post below, I can answer some questions, and then we're actually going to get into some stuff on Green Bay itself, how to fish it, like spring, summer, fall. If you guys have any interest in coming over here to fish Green Bay itself, we'll kind of go through some of that stuff. So I'm going to refresh the feed real quick. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Like I said, Thorne's doing a really cool online sale due to the Minnesota show being canceled and the Northwest show and stuff like that. So support the shop, please. It's a really good local business. It's by far, I think, the best musky shop that's out there, and as well as like ice fishing stuff, open water stuff, bass fishing, walleye fishing. The people that work there are really educated and are really, really good fishermen. A lot of them spend a ton of time fishing. Our custom rods are incredible. I know our trend for our new 10-footer is taking on pretty strong. Like a lot of guys are going to that rod. I fished with them last year, and my order this year was strictly 10-foot rods. I sold everything I owned under 9'9" is now sold, and I'm all Thorne rods from 9'9" up to 10 foot. So all my customers will fish with those this year, and I think we're gonna have a lot of guys that are gonna want to get them for their own because they are incredible. And I think they're doing a discount on all the custom rod orders and musky baits, electronics, everything like that. Let's see what we got. James, think it's worth upgrading from Mega Side Imaging to Mega Side Imaging Plus. So what that is that's the Gen 2 unit versus the Gen 3 unit. That's up to you. It's obviously, they're not cheap units. They are expensive. I completely understand that. But what the Plus is going to get is it's going to give you that extra distance. Like I said, that extra 20% further on each side of the boat. And then also that a little bit crisper image, and then a little bit more to scale. So the 2s are really cool. Obviously, they're a great unit. If you've got them, is it worth it? That's up to you. I'm sure you could sell them for a good price if you wanted to do that, or if you wanted to move one of the units maybe to the front or use a unit as a GPS unit. It's up to you. It's up if you can rationalize it, go for it. I think you're definitely going to get benefits from the 3s over the 2s, but it's up to you if it's worth it to make that investment. Let's see. Are you using only Humminbird, or do some people run Garmin and Humminbird? Have you tried Live Scope? I do not have any Garmin units on my boat. I've fished with Garmin units. I have a friend who has the Live Scope, and it's really cool just to watch your baits come in and see stuff. As far as like my thing with that is, as far as musky fishing itself, if I had to pick one unit, it would still be the side imaging from Humminbird, the Humminbird units, just because you can see so much water, and being able to see fish that are tight to bottom is really crucial, or see fish that are pegged, in a weed line, or like that first image I went through when that fish was through the weed bed and sitting on the bottom. I'm not sure. I guess I don't have enough experience with the Panoptics or Live Scope, but I don't know if you would actually see that fish. But then as well, what you need to remember is Live Scope is live time, right? So you don't have the history factor. If you're not looking at the graph, you won't see if that fish swims through while you're looking out at your bait, and you look down and nothing's there. That's because that fish already swam through. With the history from the Humminbird units, you can actually see what's happened like the last 10 seconds or 15 seconds. So you're not going to miss anything as long as you check that unit every 15 seconds. You're going to see everything. Versus with the Live Scope or Panoptic stuff, if you're not staring at that unit the whole time, you could possibly miss something if you look away for a half a second. Whereas if that fish went past my transducer on a figure 8 for a half a second that it was there, my graph marked it, and I can see that for up to 10 to 15 seconds. So it's really cool. I'm sure there's going to be some advantages for it. But if I had to buy one unit or fish with one unit specifically, it would definitely still be the Humminbird stuff. Okay, I'm gonna play this one more time, then we're gonna get into some green base stuff, or refresh this, I should say. Looking at side imaging units, Solix or Helix? I know that's everyone's question. Also, how big a screen? So I'll say this: you'll never say your screen's too big, but there's definitely times where you'll wish you had a bigger screen. Obviously, the Solix units are more expensive. That's due to the touchscreen features. They have more storage and a faster processor, and a couple more, small like micro detailing features. So again, that's up to you personally if you want to make the investment into the Solix units. Yeah, the biggest thing with the Solix units is they have to be rigged right. They're a lot more temperamental as far as voltage. I know Johnny's got that really dialed in, rigging the boats at Thorne, where he's figured out, how to wire them so that they make sure that those units have the correct amount of voltage at all times, because the Solix units draw a ton of power, and that's because they are a really powerful unit. But at the same time, you have to be careful because you don't want to have voltage issues and then have your units dying on you, because they are very dependent on a very high source of power from your boat. So if you do go the Solix route, there's obviously some benefits to it. You can do a 15-inch screen of the Solix. The biggest screen you can get with a Helix is a 12. So if you want to do one super giant unit, you can do that. If you want more storage for waypoints, I think the Solix units allow you to store 10,000 waypoints, I want to say. And the Helix units are 2,500. So I know I'm about out of space as far as waypoints as well. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my next boat. I might go Solixes. I'm thinking about doing that. But like I say, the biggest thing is making sure they're rigged the right way. As far as screen, like I say, the bigger the screen, the happier you're going to be with your units. It's whatever you can afford, but the screens are awesome. The bigger, the better. Do you think there'd be any advantages to run 360 instead of side imaging? Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can see 360 degrees around the boat. You can't see what's in front of you with a side imaging unit unless you're drifting sideways. Then you have a small cone angle that's shooting this way. But if you're driving forward, you can only see what you've went past, right? With the 360 units, you'll actually be able to see what's in front of you. The thing with the 360 units is I guess I don't have one personally, but I'm not sure. I've heard some really, really good things about them. Obviously, the new Mega 360 looks really cool. But remember too, it's your transom gives you such a good image from your transducer because it's the most stationary point in your boat, whereas your bow, where you'd mount a 360 unit, is the point of your boat that moves the most. And the more movement you have, your images aren't going to be quite as crisp. So if you're in big waves or big water, you're probably not going to get nearly as good images as you'd like. But if you're in a smaller lake or have calm water, you're going to get really, really cool images. And I think there's definitely some benefits for the 360 stuff. I think we're good on comments so far. I think I answered all of them so far. Like I say, guys, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. I think we're good. Oh, here's another. When using side imaging towards the shallows, what's your go-to structure to drop waypoints, fish when searching new spots while using side imaging? What's your go-to structure to drop waypoints to the fish when searching new spots? I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
What is it?
When using side imaging, looking toward the shallows, so on the inside of the boat, what's your go-to structure to drop waypoints to fish when searching new spots? So, I mean, if you're seeing, I think kind of what you're getting at is if you want to drop waypoints on maybe like a transition line from rock to sand or weed to sand, there's 100 different options as far as what kind of icon you can use for your unit. I've got specific icons that work for me. There's like a palm tree that I use for sand. There's a rock icon, there's boulders icons, there's hazard icons, there's like caution signs. So there's lots of different options. So as far as how you can customize what you want your map to look like. All right, let's get on to Green Bay in the spring. I'd say this is by far the most popular time to fish Green Bay, and simply because we've got a body of water that's 12 miles wide by 98 miles long, and all the fish in that body of water are condensed into a very small area, coming into the rivers to attempt to spawn. Our fishery is 100% stocked. We've got like next to zero natural reproduction. It's a completely stocked fishery. All the clubs around here help stock the bay. Titletown Muskies does an incredible job of stocking, but it's all from anglers, right? And a lot with Minnesota as well. A lot of you guys have stock fisheries, but the Great Lakes strain of Muskies still come into the river. They still attempt to spawn. They go through all the motions. They're just really not successful. But as far as rivers, the Fox River is by far the most popular. The largest amount of fish go into that river. Festival River, Swamico River, Menominee River, and Little Sturgeon Bay all hold fish that come in the spring. And then the biggest thing with this is a lot of these river systems, there's current, right? So there's current, and finding that current slack water transition can be really important. These fish really aren't looking to feed, I think, which is something that people are always worried about. They're like, man, I went and fished the Fox and I couldn't find any weeds. And the thing with it is they're not looking for cover. They're not looking to hide. They're the apex predator. They have nothing to hide from. And like I said, they're not focused on feeding. They're simply there. They want to spawn. They want to do their thing, get in there, get it done, and get back out into the bay to feed and recover from the spawn. So don't be so much worried about finding structure. Okay, our fish absolutely love sand, and that's really kind of all they have in the river itself is sand and mud. So in that area, it's not so much about finding cover. It's basically just covering water and hopefully getting a reaction strike out of a fish. So again, the thing with this is the warmer the water is really, really important. Warm water is so much more crucial than structure. And you'll see a lot of times too on your side imaging that the carp are in the shallows at the same time too, getting ready to spawn. And you'll see a lot of times I'll see where there's carp actually hanging out in the same areas as muskies because they're simply looking for the same thing, the warmest water they can possibly find. Okay. If you have a place like Little Sturgeon where there's really not much inflow, there's two tiny little creeks that come into the back of it, but there's really not flow there. What it is a darker bottom. And those fish are, we get our predominant northwest wind, those waves will actually come in Little Sturgeon and will kind of stir up the water in the back. That water gets dirty, and therefore that water attracts heat, and that water's warmer there than anywhere else. So those fish kind of hang out in the back of the bay. One thing with muskies on the bay, muskies are muskies. They have a great low light bite period on either side, but it almost seems like that late morning window can be a time that you definitely want to be on the water. This is something that Ron Strand actually talked to me about, and once he said something to me about it, it definitely made sense, or it definitely proved itself. That 9 to 11 time frame is really crucial on the bay for muskies. There's definitely some kind of light window there, and besides a major or minor, it's just like they can't wait for that water to warm up a little bit. It's almost like they're starving themselves, and then you put a bait past them when that water's starting to warm up for the day, and they'll eat it. But that's a great time to be on the water. You definitely don't want to miss that. Late spring, summer. So our opener is Memorial Day. I guess I should have covered that. So that spring I would call like Memorial Day weekend to June 20th. And then this late spring / summer period, I would call June 20th to July 20th. And once that water hits 70 degrees in the rivers, the fish kind of just bail. They get out of there. They go out to the open water. Nobody's really figured out that pattern. But the fish move deep. They're out of there. The fish get, like I say, really scattered. Some fish are deep, some fish are hanging on deep structure, some fish are up shallow in the weeds already. They're kind of just everywhere. That's kind of when I bail. I go guide on Lake of the Woods for the month of July, basically, and then come back to Green Bay in August. You can peck away at them and catch them, but it's not nearly the success rate that you'll have, in that spring or late summer / fall. Summer in Green Bay, like I say, this I would call that July 20th to September 10th. This is our casting bite in the summer. A lot of people think that Green Bay is just a place to troll. It's really not. My first 3 weeks or 4 weeks of season are basically all casting. The fish are shallow. They're in the rivers. They're really, in an easy spot to cast. And then the summer period as well, like I say, this, the whole month of August, basically into a little bit into September, the fish are really in good casting areas. They move into the weed beds. The perch are kind of in the weeds. The fish chase those perch in there, and then they hang out there. So they're in, again, that shallower water, 4 to 10 feet of water. And we get to cast these giant sandbars and weed flats. But they definitely prefer cabbage. Like I say, spots, there's no secrets. Peshko shoal, Ganos, Littletail. There's 3 spots. Like they're massive, but there's going to be boats. And Green Bay, I always say this, Green Bay is such a mentally exhausting place to fish because you're always within sight of boats. You see fish caught, you see guys miss fish, lose fish. And some days it seems like, you're doing everything wrong and you can't possibly get a bite and everyone else is catching fish. And it can really wear on you mentally, but you just have to worry about what you're doing, focus on what you're doing, and put your time in, and eventually good things will happen for you. As far as baits, I guess this is the summer period. The spring stuff is pretty standard. You're straightforward. Small bucktails, small topwaters actually work for us in the spring, but it's basically bucktails and topwaters, and then some small swim baits. Little swimming dogs were really, really good this last year. But in the summer, blades, right? It's blades and rubber. It's 10s, 9s, 8s, and staggers. The one thing with the fish in the bay is I've got to fish a lot of really cool places all over the country, and the thing that with Green Bay fish is they're so unique, I think, as far as like they will tune into a specific style or color of bait. And it's really made me change the way that I buy lures. I don't buy lures. I don't buy like one of this, one of that. I'd rather buy 3 of one thing. So I know I have 3 baits of the same exact one. So if they bite that bait, I can get out those other baits. Because there's days where they will eat a bait that has 4 strands of green tinsel in it versus the other one that doesn't. And they will consistently eat the one with 4 strands of green tinsel in it. It's crazy. And same goes for blades too. The hex blades, like the Spankies, are super good out here. Smooth blades work as well, and then fluted blades. Like it's all figuring out what those fish want. It changes day to day, sometimes even hour to hour. But carrying multiple of the same bait for me has been really important to make sure that if one bait's getting bit, I got more to give my other customers. I'm not buying 100 different baits, I'm buying 30 baits in multiples of 3. Okay, that's kind of my process on it now. As far as colors, blacks, greens, golds, chartreuse, purple are all super good. Mag dogs are awesome. We don't catch a lot of fish on pounders. Our fish eat small stuff. They like regular medusas, regular dogs, or mag dogs, even regular dogs some days too in the middle of summer. But they do eat smaller stuff for sure. Swim baits, they obviously like swim baits, came on strong the last few years in musky fishing. Poseidons and Shadzillas definitely work, I think, better in the summer, but the swimming dogs, which is kind of funny, the swimming dogs definitely outperform those two in the spring. I think it's just due to the tail kick. The swimming dogs are much more subtle. They got more of a belly roll and not as large of a tail versus the Poseidons and the Shadzillas have a lot wider tail kick, more tail thump, more action. And those don't nearly work as well in the spring as they do in the summer. So you kind of got to make that flip, or at least I make the flip from spring to summer. As far as plastics colors, anything shad, white, blue, silver, black, and orange is always a standby. Walleye color, always a standby. Black and green, and twister tails as well. A lot of guys over here use twister tails in their bucktails, almost to the point where I've kind of went away from putting twister tails on my blades just because everybody does it. But it's definitely a nice little teaser. It seems like those fish, they'll come up behind it, and just that little twister tail in front of them can maybe finally make them commit. But like I say, they can definitely tune into one bait color or another. As far as rods, I kind of went through this before. I've went all Thorne rods. Like I say, my order this year was strictly 10-footers. I did sell all my other stuff. I got a 9.9, 2 9.10s, and then all the rest of my rods will be the new 10-footers from Thorne. They're incredible. I did the 10-foot extra heavies, and then I did the 10-foot heavy -1. So those rods, I guess, will be 9-foot 11. So kind of my spring rod, that heavy is going to be my spring rod, smaller bucktails, smaller top waters. And then the extra heavy will do anything from 10s, 9s, 10s, 12s, 13s, and as well as rubber as well, pounders, if you want to throw pounders on them, mag dogs, regular deuces, any of that stuff. So that's definitely my rod of choice now. As far as reels, I personally fish with the Daiwa stuff. The new Daiwa Alexa is really cool. I got to fish with this last fall. And even the old ones, like I say, were super good to me. But the cool thing about Daiwa is they have 4 different gear ratios. Okay, they have a 5-1, 6-3, 7-1, 8-1. So in a scenario like myself, when I'm guiding customers, I don't want to be hounding on a guy all day. If I tell him, here, throw this bucktail, and I see him retrieving it, and it's like, hey, slow down a little bit. He'll do it for 3 casts, and then he'll be talking to his buddy, or just chit chatting with me, and then I'll watch, and he'll be right back to burning that bait a little bit faster than I want. So instead of hounding my guy all day every 3 casts, telling him to slow down, I'll just, instead of having fish with a 6-3, I'll grab a 5-1 and say, here, fish with this one. Okay, so now I just changed. He can reel the same speed as he was, that he feels comfortable with, but I myself just changed the speed of the bait by giving him a different reel. Okay, and I find myself even doing it because I've got enough stuff going on the boat. I'm focusing on enough other things where I don't want to have to worry about how fast I need to be reeling. I'm just gonna keep fishing my bait, checking out, watching my graph, seeing everything else that's going around. So I do it just as well. So the 4 gear ratios is super nice. I definitely prefer the 5-1 and the 6-3 for blades. If you're gonna do the 10s, 12s, supermodels, definitely the 5.1. If you're gonna do 8s, 9s, and 7s, the 6-3s, 7-1s. If you want to burn them, go for it. They're a super nice reel. I like the really big handle that they got. It doesn't make your hand cramp up your fingertips, I should say. Nice low profile. And then the 8-1s as well. I use the 7-1s and the 8-1s for rubber or jerk baits. That quick line pickup is really crucial when you're working those pull pause baits back to the boat. This is just a short clip. I guess I can show you guys this of what the bay is kind of like in the summer. There's always boats. You can see there's 2 boats here in the background. This is father son in the boat. I'm changing colors. So that was a short little clip. Like I say, just from this last fall, gentleman got a 44 incher and a figure eight, and then he caught that one. I think it was a 15.5 incher. Some really cool jumps next to the boat. But you can see we're just kind of out in the open. We're on a weed flat there. We're a couple miles offshore. You can see the other boats. There's always boats around and stuff like that. I just had a question come through. Dan asking how has the high water on Green Bay affected muskie location in the fall versus 2-3 years ago? In the fall, I don't think it's affected it too much. It's more so in the summer. We're starting to lose our weed growth because that sun can't penetrate as deep to get to the bottom to get some of our weed growth. So we're actually losing some of our weed growth, I would say, due to the high water. The one cool thing with the high water is in the rivers, we might actually have a better chance of our fish starting to naturally reproduce. It's not going to mean we need to quit stocking it all. We're always going to have to stock. But if we could get a little help from the fish themselves, the higher water is actually going to get the fish to possibly spawn outside of the natural riverbed. So we'll actually get out of, we had so much contamination in the river from PCBs and all the industry over the years in the Fox River that our rivers are so dirty and the soil so contaminated that the eggs couldn't make it. So now that we've got water that's kind of exceeded its banks, we might actually hopefully see a little bit of natural reproduction. Like I say, it'll never be enough to sustain the bay. We'll always have to stock it. But hopefully that's kind of what I'm hoping for with the high water. Next little portion here, I guess, is the last section, fall, right? Fall is a super popular time to come to Green Bay. It's known as a place to troll. This is our time of year to troll. September 10th until October 31st is super good. Our season used to go to the end of November. Now our regulations just changed. Our season is now open until December 31st. So we got an extra month of fishing. I'm pretty excited about that. It's going to open up some other opportunities and definitely going to be fishing a lot later into the year. It's not going to be, I don't think, a numbers thing super late in the year, but if you catch the right fish, Green Bay has the potential to kick out a 50-pound fish for sure. So I'm excited to do that. And that's the time of year to catch it, either there or opening weekend if you can luckily find a pre-spawn fish. So I'm looking forward to both this spring and next fall, be able to fish later, do some different stuff. I'm excited for that. But what happens now is our main forage, I think, for these muskies in Green Bay is shad. Okay, we've got a huge shad population, and our shad are fairly small, anywhere from 2 inches up to 6-8 inches. So that's why our fish like those smaller profile baits. So the shad actually start to move south towards the Fox River. That's where they spawn. Shad spawn in the fall. So they start to move south, and our fish basically just pull out of the weeds from the perch and start chasing the shad down south in the bay. So we work them kind of lower in the bay as we go down. We start up at the top and just slowly work our way back down towards the Fox River in the fall. So the fish are out in the sand flats chasing these school of shad around. As far as your spots, it's Gano, Little Tail, Long Tail, Frying Pan, University Bay, and the Fox River itself. We'll also get a push of whitefish in the river as well. Green Bay has a really big whitefish population. Our fish don't feed on them as much as I don't think Minnesota fish do, but they definitely do eat some whitefish, and there's plenty of them to be had. But the whitefish also make their way down to the river. So you get two different forage bases that are moving down to the Fox River to spawn in the fall, and that brings walleyes in as well. Walleyes definitely stack up in the river in the fall. But like I said, bait moves out, muskies move out, and it's a migration south. And this is a great time to catch our fish. The beauty of Green Bay is we can run 3 lines per person, and we can put out a big spread. So if I've got 3 guys in the boat, I can put out 12 rods, and we can run a spread. I can run about 14 rods off my boat's kind of the max I can do. But if I got enough guys in the boat, more lines the better in my scenario. And I got one little clip here to show you guys. Again, all these clips and all these videos are on my YouTube channel. If you guys want to check that out, I got a ton of musky content on there. I post a ton in the winter. In the summer, I'm kind of busy guiding and don't post a ton, but right now I'm putting out like 1 or 2 videos a week. Some of our tips on like tackle stuff, and then others are fish catches like this one. But I'll show you this one quick. And a little feel for kind of what happens. Again, that sonar period, I'm always out for that sonar to come off. There's a fish outside and everything right there. You'll see the rod that goes off into this inside door on the port side. These guys are both from Germany. If you hear them kind of doing this German. This is a real big bite. That's a big fish. That's a guy from Germany. Like I said, it was his first muskie he'd ever caught. They came over and fished for a handful of days on their own, and then they weren't having any success. They got a hold of me and got him out for a fish of a lifetime. That's for sure. As far as baits, super shads. I hate to say it. I can't stand fishing them, but they outfish everything. It's Rapala super shads. Fire Tiger and perch, they crush them. There's days where I'll run 12 of the same exact bait, same exact color. But they outperform everything, and it's really frustrating to me. I've tried a bunch of stuff. I've bought thousands of dollars worth of other crankbaits to try, and I found a couple other ones that work, but still day in and day out, the super shads just seem to outperform everything. Trolling blades is also super effective on the bay. Ripping blades around behind planer boards is super good when that water temperature is still, I'd say, above 68 degrees. The one thing I like with crankbaits, if I'm going to pick them out that are not super shads, is no rattles. And I like wood baits as well. So no noise. The fish, I think, on Green Bay like things a little bit more subtle. They don't like things that are so loud and aggressive. The heavier blades, like the Spanky 40,000s blades, more aggressive, or less aggressive, I should say. Lower pitch sound in the water, thicker wire, lower pitch sounds. Everything's not so much in their face. It's more subtle, and I think they like that. And again, with the smaller baits, it's more subtle as well. But the wood baits, I don't like rattles in them either. If you think about a wood bait, right, versus a plastic bait, when a bait's sitting down there shaking, right, at 3.5, 4 miles an hour, a hook hitting a piece of plastic that's probably hollow or injected plastic is going to be a lot more loud than a hook hitting a balsa bait like a super shad or a bait that's made out of wood. So it's not only thinking about rattles, but also thinking about the hooks that are hitting the side of your bait as far as how loud it is. The one other bait that I do say will work, it actually has my biggest trolling fish personally on it, is a shallow invader that does have a rattle in it. But that's kind of my exception to the rule. Invaders definitely catch fish in the bay. There are some times where the fish will slide back into the weeds in the fall. You can catch them casting. It's a very small percentage of the time, but it can be really special. I had one day a couple of years ago, we had a 49.5, a 50.5, and a 51-incher all casting in October in the weeds, but that happens very, very rarely. And then the next day I went out and did it again. Saw one fish all day, and then the trollers out in the flats crushed them. But again, there are times where they do go shallow. I do like to run a down rod when it's rougher. I think the rougher the water, the more likely I am to put a down rod in. If it's calm, I like to just get the boards out away from the boat, and not be so much in the fish's face. And again, that's the thing with watching your electronics. Just see where those fish are relating. It'll change from day to day. Some days those fish seem to really like the boat. They like either the prop, the prop wash, that the displacement from your kicker blade, or they like that, or they'll kind of be attracted to that. And then there's other days where you'll only mark them on the very edges of your screen, and those are the days where they're kind of skittish, and that's when you'll pull your down rods out, get your planer boards out, and get them as far away from the boat as you possibly can. So that's kind of how I go about it. I do put some twister tails, some small 3-inch twisters on some of my trolling baits, just for a little teaser on the back. And then inline weights, it's kind of like the St. Clair trolling stuff. We run inline weights. A lot of them are 2-ounce weights, right in line. I'm coming out with a cool cool weight system this fall that I think a lot of guys are really going to like on Green Bay and St. Clair to help eliminate our floating lead situation. But that's in the works. I'll be releasing that, I would say, in the next month or two. But those are going to be really cool. I'm excited to share those with you guys. I think they're going to help a lot for our trolling stuff on the bay. We're going to skip this video. Trolling, like I say, blades, if you control blades, 3.5 to 4 miles an hour generally when your water temps are 75 to 68 degrees. Crankbait speed is 3.5 to, I've got 3.0 here. The colder the water, the slower you want to troll. So 3.5 all the way down to maybe 2.2, like salmon trolling speed. But that's kind of where I like to run my speeds. If I do run a down rod, it's a bigger bait than it's not a super shad, first of all. And it's generally more of a little bit larger bait, a little bit more invasive bait, maybe an invader, maybe a bucktail, some other stuff like that, but something that's a little bit bigger. But anything but a super shad, because I like to say I can't stand fishing them. So my down rod's kind of the rod that I get to play with. That's my fun rod personally. In overview, I guess, for Green Bay, it's a world-class fishery. Electronics are by far your best friend. Auto chart is incredible, and your units are made for waypoints. So if you're marking fish or see stuff, drop waypoints, use your electronics to your advantage. If you're not, you're missing out, and you need to take the time to learn them. It can be frustrating, but just get familiar with them, put the time in, and eventually, like I say, guys, good things will happen. It's a giant body of water. It'll happen for you. So if you guys have any interest in coming over to Green Bay, it's like I say, an incredible place to fish if you want a little help. Obviously right now I can't guide due to our Corona stuff, but in the future, we can definitely get you guys out in the water once this stuff kind of passes. So if you guys have any questions on that or want to get a hold of me, you can find me on my Facebook page, Doug Wegner Fishing, or my YouTube channel, Instagram page, all kinds of stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed the seminar. I hope you guys learned something for sure. And, like I say, if you want to help out the local business, Thorne is doing a great giveaway, and all the vendors that would generally be at the Musky show. Definitely help those guys out. We all kind of need to help each other out in this time. Our industry is pretty small, and we all need to help each other out. So if you guys want to buy some baits, definitely I suggest it. It's a great time, and Thorne's doing a really good sale. Electronics, you want to make the investment in that, get a hold of Thorne, get a hold of Johnny right at the shop. He can rig up your boat, do everything for you, show you how to run them and what you're looking at. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to figure out how to turn this Facebook Live off, but thank you guys again. If you have any other questions, I guess I'll stay on here for another minute. I'll refresh this and see if you guys have any final questions. Let me know. I'll go through those and answer those real quick. And then I'm going to be letting you guys get back to your day. Just refresh this one more time. It's a little lagged, so I'm actually about 30-40 seconds ahead of you guys. So I'm going to sit on here for a little bit, see if any new comments come in. Yeah, Paul Hartman too deserves a shout out for making this happen. Obviously, it sucks that the show got canceled, but Paul did his best to help out his vendors as much as he could, and I think this virtual Musky show was awesome. I think I've got some good feedback from a couple of different companies saying that it's definitely helping. So big shout out to Paul. Thank you very much for doing this for everybody. Everybody obviously, like I said, needs to stick together in all this. But kudos to him for willing to put the time in to still get everybody some business and give everybody the great opportunity to buy baits from all the retailers. All right, one last refresher, and then I'm gonna get out of here. Go play with some bucktails or build some baits or something. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will see you guys hopefully on the water or at the shop.